I warmly welcome you all to the fifth and final workshop of Jumpstart workshop series, the workshop on legal aspect of startups. Jumpstart is a signature professional development project of the Rotaract Club of Achievers Lanka Business School, which is conducted for the fourth consecutive year. Jumpstart is a platform for budding entrepreneurs to pitch their creative business ideas to a panel of judges in order to win prizes worth 100,000 along with knowledge and mentorship from the best in the industry. Also, we connect growth stage startups with investors and give them an opportunity to receive investments for their businesses. Today's workshop will give you an understanding on business registrations, how to protect your business through intellectual property, and so much more. Before moving on to the workshop, I would like to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors for Jumpstart 2020 are SEMA Sri Lanka, Bronze Partner, Venture Frontier, Knowledge Partner, Shirtworks, Gift Partner, PwC, Advisory Partner, ELO Chambers, Legal Consultation Partner, Hub9 Co-working Space Partner, Startup X Foundry, Mentoring Partner, My Shopbox, IT Solutions Partner, Chocolate, Media Partner, and Thuru Reforestation Partner. Here's a small shout out to our bronze partner SEMA Sri Lanka, gift partner Shirtworks, and co-working space partner Hub9.
Our story is one of reimagining. Reimagining who you can be, what you can achieve, and how SEMA can support you. As technology and digital platforms disrupt businesses, we are reimagining what the profession can be. We've updated our syllabus to meet the expectation of employers, ensuring SEMA-qualified professionals have the skills to make an impact from day one. Reimagine your career. Contact SEMA Sri Lanka.
Hi guys, my name is Pula. I'm an entrepreneur. I work as a student coach and my business is based around YouTube. Hub9 has played a major role in my work life. Since Hub9 offers 24/7 access, it has been very convenient for me. Between shooting, editing my videos and doing coaching sessions, I work on a very flexible schedule. There's air conditioning, you can just come in and plug your laptop and start work. There's no hassle at all. The staff and the people you find here are really friendly. You get tea as well, so overall you can just focus on your work and get a lot of it done within a day. The internet speed here is super fast and that has helped me a lot with my upload. There's a chill out area downstairs. I go there when I need to take a break or just a change in my environment. It helps to keep my balance while I'm working here. This meeting room is really nice. I have used it for some of my interviews and I also use it for my coaching sessions and meetings with clients. If you are working here, you can easily book it for your meetings as well. During the pandemic, Hub9 has taken all the necessary precautions to keep all of us safe, so that's all good. The value I get for the 15,000 rupees I invest at Hub9 is just amazing. If you're just starting off your business, this is a good place to start.
Today's workshop will be conducted by Mr. Revan Weerasinghe, legal consultant at SLINTECH. Mr. Revan holds a Master's in Law from University of Colombo, a BSc in Information Systems and Management, a LLB in Law, and a Diploma in Economics from the University of Colombo, from the University of London, and a Post-Attorney Diploma in Intellectual Property from Sri Lankan Law College. Apart from functioning as an advocate in court, He consults to several companies and startups on intellectual property strategy, information security best practices, and the benefits derived from creating an intellectual property enabling environment within an organization. Mr. Revan, over to you.
Thanks, Sanditi. Can you guys see me? Right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to make this as interesting as I possibly can. So I'm going to start with the heading of what we're going to talk about. We're talking about startups, and we're talking about the legal aspects for startups and what's essentially required for startups to enable themselves and to do better, to basically be a success in the marketplace, not only locally and globally. Right, so I'm not going to only talk about the local scenario. I'm going to talk about the global scenario as well. Essentially, how do we take Sri Lankan technologies, Sri Lankan businesses to a global marketplace? Because I want you guys to achieve the best. I want you all to target to be able to one day be a unicorn. A unicorn is a company that's worth or valued at $1 billion US. But I strongly believe if you don't reach for the stars, you're not going to even get halfway. So let's reach for the stars. Let's ensure that our businesses get to the final destination, which is the world. Right. So let me share my screen, and then we'll get on with the presentation. Right. Sorry. Let me just share my screen. Has my screen come on?
Yes, Mr. Revan.
Right. So should you would see 4 countries, right, on the screen? I'm not sure what's showing on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, let's start here before I go into legal, the whole legal aspects. Here you see before you 4 countries. Okay. You see China, you see India, you see America, and you see Sri Lanka. Now, what we want for our businesses is to compete not only in a Sri Lankan scenario to do successfully in Sri Lanka, but we also wanted to compete with the world. We want our businesses to go global. We want success more than anything else in the global marketplace. But for us to be relevant in the world, we need to, at one point, think of how we are going to compete with, say, China and India in terms of what the world requires, what the world needs. So I'm going to target my presentation to taking Sri Lankan companies to the world essentially, right? And for that, as you rightly said, there are certain legal requirements that you need to fulfill. For instance, you need to set up a company. You need to create certain intellectual property. You need to register a trademark. If you have an invention or something, you need to register a patent. And you need to see how best you can take this to a global marketplace. But I think it first starts with what sort of business do you want to create? What sort of business do you want to start? And that starts with a thought. That starts with an idea. Now, all of us have various ideas for startups and businesses that we want to put in place. Some may think of way out ideas. Some may think of very simple, practical ideas that can be implemented from your house. Right? But before we go into your business, let's talk about what's happening in the world right about now. And the reason what's happening in the world right about now. The reason I want to put up this picture that you have ahead of you is I want to talk about, firstly, the importance of leveraging on intellectual property. Now, the first part of my presentation that I'm going to give you is going to be on IP and what is intellectual property and why you need intellectual property in your business. The second part of my presentation, I'm going to go into aspects of company, registration of sole proprietorships, public listed companies, trusts, and various other registrations. But I know the audience may find registrations and where to go and find and register companies might be slightly boring. So let's start with a bit of a dialogue, right? Now you see four countries here. You see China with a population of 1.4 billion, India with a population of 1.3 billion, right? And then you see America with a population of 325.7 million. Now, China and India, as you know, are doing extremely well nowadays, right? Especially China is always in the news. They are industry leaders in a big way. And they are known for having gigantic factories, mega factories, right? And their development capacity is very, very large. And as a result of that, they are able to develop production at a mega scale, at like millions and at massive quantities. So the advantage they have there is that they have what's known as economy of scale. Now, I'm sure most of you in your degrees and your diplomas would have learned about what economy of scale is. If you have an economy of scale, is the advantage that companies have when they do mass production of a certain goods or service. If you do mass production of a certain goods or service, you are able to sell that product for much cheaper because there is advantage that is built in producing large quantities of the same product. Like for instance, China, if they produce something, they'll be able to produce it much cheaper than Sri Lanka is able to produce a particular piece of goods or unit of production. The reason for that is we might be producing 10,000 units of the same product, whereas China must be doing 1 million or 2 million or 10 million. Right? As a result of that, they have what's known as a massive economy of scale. They're able to sell for much cheaper. Same with India. India, just like China, has massive factories, and they also have large expanses of land. So, for instance, they are able to produce at a far larger quantity than what Sri Lanka can. Now, in time to come, Sri Lankan produce, as good as it is, let's talk about Sri Lankan produce. Let's talk about key exports: tea, rubber, coconut, garments, textiles, software, and various cinnamon, spices that we produce. We produce well, and we produce at a certain value. But in time to come, if China and India can produce the same products, like for instance, tea, rubber, coconut is also found in China and India. Spices are also found in China and India. Certain minerals that Sri Lanka exports are also produced in China and India. Textiles is also produced in China and India. The point I'm trying to say is China and India is able to sell those same products for much cheaper than what Sri Lanka can sell at a given price point. Like for instance, if we are selling at 50 rupees, they are able to sell it at 40 rupees, simply because they have much larger factories and much larger agricultural lands, and their labor populations are much more. So in time to come, one issue I feel that Sri Lankans are going to face is this issue of relevancy. Are we able to compete in terms of supply with China and India? Right? And if we don't if we are unable to compete with China and India, what happens to our businesses in selling to the world? I'm not talking about the Sri Lankan context, but just selling to the world. For instance, you take the garment industry, textiles, right? China and India are able to probably produce a unit of garment much cheaper than Sri Lanka. So then how does Sri Lanka compete? Because we export these garments. We export them to the US, we export them to the UK and various European countries. How do we remain relevant? Now, our labor population is also increasing, growing in size on a day-to-day basis. As a result of that, can we remain competitive? Can we have business? Can we sell to the marketplace? This is a question that I'd like to leave you all with, because it's a question that all our businesses will possibly face in time to come. And this is the foundation of which I would like to talk about intellectual property and the importance of intellectual property. I mean, you all have all heard about intellectual property. People talk about intellectual property. You've heard about it in your universities. But this is why it's important. Now, if you look at the population of China and India, it's 1.39, and India is 1.32 billion. It's a lot of people, right? But America, with a population of merely just 325 million, 326 million, is able to compete with China and India and become the best in the world, right? They are known as possibly the most powerful country in the world. They have the most powerful military in the world. Their economy is doing pretty well now, surprisingly, after Trump. So what is the secret to their success? And can we as Sri Lankans learn a lesson from that? So the reason for their success, in my humble opinion, is this, right? I'd like to leave you with this thought that America owns all these companies. I'm not saying just because they own these companies is the reason for that success. But a lesson I'd like to leave you with is all these companies, if you break them down and what they hold and what they own a lot of intellectual property. Now I'll go into what intellectual property is, but the reason these companies are very, very, very successful, like Google, Facebook, Coca-Cola, Goodyear, Amazon, 3M, iPhone, Visa, is because they have invested heavily in intellectual property, right? If you look at Google, there's a lot of software that goes into Google. Microsoft, there's a lot of software that goes into Microsoft. Facebook is also software. Coca-Cola is a trade secret. Levi's, there's a lot of patents also and trade secrets. 3M, there are a lot of patents. Castrol, there's a lot of patents. And this is the reason for the US success in this global marketplace. And they're able to compete because if you look at China and India, they are selling their products at the cheapest price possible. Well, now they're taking a value addition route, and it's a generalization to say they're trying to sell at the cheapest price possible. But generally, because of economy of scale, they are able to sell cheap, and as a result of that, they have captured a large market, right? But if Sri Lanka wants to compete with the rest of the world and compete with China and India and Bangladesh and Vietnam and all the other countries that are in the region, then my humble advice is that we take a lesson from the US. Because the US has all their businesses leveraged on intellectual property, right? And that is very, very important, because what intellectual property does is it enables you to sell your products at a higher price point. And people will buy your products at a higher price point, because there is what's known as value creation. There is value addition to your products as opposed to a normal commodity or as opposed to a normal product that is on the shelf. So whilst China and India and the rest of the world, they are heavily into intellectual property as well. But if you look at standard products like, say, textiles, whilst they can produce the same shirt for, say, 2,000 rupees or less, they can produce it for far cheaper than Sri Lanka because of the economy of scale. If we have created some value to the shirt, for instance, the material is different, it's new, or it's patented, or the material has certain advantages attached to it, like the dye doesn't, various innovations are built into it. Then the person that produces that shirt is able to sell that shirt at a much higher price point than what you would get if you just sell standard products. And that is what you see in the US. Now, all these products are sold at a very high standpoint simply because they have built into their innovations, they have built into their products all sorts of different innovations, copyrights, patents, trademarks, industrial design, all sorts of intellectual property. So IP is what's going to create future markets. It's what's going to create demand for all our products, goods, and services in the time to come. Nothing else but intellectual property, right? If someone tells you what is going to be a game changer for your business, I'm telling you, it is if you leverage on IP, you can be a success. But if you're going to leverage on IP, your IP has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to the marketplace. Okay, what is intellectual property? Right? There are 4 types of intellectual property. So let's start with the general definition. Intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, everything from works of art to inventions, computer programs, trademarks, and other commercial science. There are 4 main headings of IP, right? There is copyrights, there is patents, trademarks, and industrial designs. Okay, those are the 4 main headings. Apart from that, you get what's known as the unfair competition, which I will go into, and then you get integrated circuits. Your circuits have intellectual property attached to it. Geographical indicators where certain places around the world have IP attached to products that are created from that. Like, for instance, only people that manufacture from what's known as Champagne or from the region of Champagne in France can use the word champagne attached to their champagne bottles. No one else can do that. They can only call it sparkling wine. So that is like a geographical indicator that attaches itself to certain regions, right? So let's first talk about copyrights, patents, trademarks, and industrial designs. I'm sure most of you all know this, but in case you don't, I'm going to go through the mere basics of what copyright, patents, trademarks, and industrial designs are. What is a copyright? A copyright is a right given. It is intellectual property rights that are granted to music, plays, software, books, photographs, sculptures, drawings, paintings, movies, recordings, choreography, and poetry. Right? It is what protects someone when they write a book. It is what protects someone when they write a play. It is what the protection you get when you take a photograph, so that no one can steal it and that photograph belongs to you. If not for copyright, anyone can steal your photographs, right? Anyone can steal your music that you have, the recordings of your music that you have composed or created or whatever. People can use it and steal it and use it, and there's nothing you can do. But because of copyright and because of the copyright regime, you can stop people from using your music if you composed it. You can stop people from copying your movies and distributing your movies without your permission. So all that is governed by copyright. Copyright, like I said, protects books, articles, software, speeches, lectures, dramatic productions, musical works, audiovisual works, drawings, paintings, sculptures, articles, blah, blah, blah. What you need for copyright to be granted to you is that copyright needs to be original, right? Meaning it cannot be created by someone else. It has to be created by me. It has to be created by you. If you have the copyright, that work of copyright has to be created by you, right? But there is no requirement for your painting to be beautiful. It is protected by the sole fact of its creation. The moment you create it, you get protection. And irrespective of the form or mode of expression, as well as content, quality, or purpose. The quality really doesn't matter. You can write the most terrible book, right? But you will be granted copyright to it the moment you write it, right? The moment that book has been written, you will be granted copyright. It is granted for the lifetime of the author plus 70 years. Okay, that's a really, really long time. A question was asked from me when I last gave a lecture on this is, now you may have an idea in your head, you relate that idea to someone else, and that person writes a book about it and sells the book. Then that person makes a lot of money on that book. Does that person breach your copyright because the whole idea was yours? That's the beauty of copyright. Only the person that does the writing has copyright to that product, to that work. Copyright is only granted the moment it has been typed out. It is not granted when it's in the idea stage. When it's in your head, there is no copyright. That's called the idea copyright dichotomy, which means that you're only granted copyright when something has been put down either on paper or on software or as a musical work or whatever. It has to be fixated on some media. Otherwise, you do not get copyright for that. Please keep that in mind. Now, software, those who are into software and those who want to create software businesses, software, copyright governs software. Software is protected by copyright. Very, very important for you to know this, right? And also keep in mind, there is no requirement for registration. So you get your software the moment you code your software. If you just have your concept of your software in your head, you don't get any protection. Keep that in mind, right? But however, if all your sketches and all your drafts and all your concepts and all your data flow diagrams all have copyright attached to it. And it's granted for 70 years plus the lifetime of the author. Moving on. I can, however, reproduce someone's copyright for the purpose of teaching, news reporting, scholarship or research, criticism and comment. This shall not be an infringement of copyright. However, this will depend on the purpose and character of use, the amount of work used, and the effect on the potential marketplace. That is very important to know. Trademarks, right? So this is what governs copyright. Like I said, copyright governs everything that is in a literal form. Every book that you have is governed by copyright. Now, I can't copy this book. I can't write this book. If I copy it word to word, the author of this book can sue me for that, right? Now, when you have copyright, the rights you have is you can go to court and stop other people from using that copyright work. And no one can use it without my permission. I therefore have the right to license people to use it. And I can charge a license fee for them to use it. So you can make a lot of money through licensing. Keep that in mind, right? What are trademarks? Trademarks are known as business identifiers. Business identifiers are what you have to identify your business. It can be either a name or it can be a mark. Now, everything you have here are trademarks, right? We all know these marks. Coca-Cola, Unilever, Amazon, Adidas, Starbucks, Facebook, McDonald's, they're all trademarks. Now, you get a trademark by registration. You don't get a trademark just because you came up with an idea and you used it. If you don't register it, you don't have rights to that mark. So you have to go to the National Intellectual Property Office, which is found in Maradana. You have to pay the requirement fee. You have to do the search to see whether this trademark exists or not. And then you have to go register such a mark. And that is very, very, very important. Now, marks are not given for... Now, when you apply for a mark, it takes about 1 or 2 years for your mark to be granted. The trademark registry will not give you a mark, right, if it does not fulfill certain requirements. For instance, your mark cannot be identical or confusingly similar to a mark that already exists. Like, for instance, I can't register the mark Google, or I can't register the mark Starbucks in Sri Lanka if there is already a registration for those marks. I can't do that because those marks already exist. But then similarly, I can't make a mark that is confusingly similar to those marks. Like, for instance, Pizza Hut, I can't go and register Pizza House, right? Because the trademark registry is going to call me up and say, look, your mark is similar to this mark, which has already been registered. Therefore, we are not going to allow you to register a Pizza House. Now, when you're registering a mark, please make sure that your mark is distinct. The largest chance you have of getting a trademark is if your trademark is distinct, meaning it is different from anything that already exists in the market. And another reason why you will not get a mark is if your mark describes the goods and services of what it describes. Like, for instance, Pizza Hut, you're not going to have exclusivity to the word pizza. You will only have, if ever, exclusive, if you're going to register Pizza House maybe, you will only have exclusivity to the word pizza house as the two words put together. If it describes your goods and services, you're not going to have the IP office will probably not give you that mark. So the stronger your mark is, the stronger marks that are out there are marks that are very, very distinct and do not mean anything. Like, for instance, Google, right? Or Unilever, Samsung, Sony, Toyota. Those are, they don't describe, like Toyota doesn't describe cars. It doesn't say automobiles. So it is a strong mark. Now, another strong local mark is Odell, right? Odell is a very strong mark because it doesn't mean anything. There is no meaning to it. Whereas things like MasterCard is a slightly weaker mark. Pizza Hut is a slightly weaker mark. Because the MasterCard has the word card in it, which kind of describes what you're trying to do, right? Facebook, it's strong, but yeah, I guess it doesn't describe the goods and services. And at the time they went to register it, there was no other Facebook in the marketplace. So that's something you need to keep in mind where trademarks are concerned. How are trademarks granted? It is granted upon registration to an applicant. It is granted upon registration. So you have to go to the National IP Office and register for a trademark. It is granted for a mark or business identifier upon the first to fulfill necessary conditions, and you have to conform with sections 103 and 104 of the IP Act. Now, what I'll encourage all you guys to do if you are starting up businesses is that you download the Intellectual Property Act number 36 of 2003. Right? It is available on the internet. You can download it and you can read it. Then you can really understand intellectual property, because intellectual property, there are so many possibilities on how you can leverage an intellectual property to make profits. If I have time, I will go into that area. Now, one thing you need to know about a trademark is it's granted only for a single territory. So if you want a trademark in several countries, you will have to go to each and every one of those countries and file trademarks, right? So it's granted only for a single territory. Then the next thing is a patent. Now, a patent, also you need to go to the registry to get it. Only copyright is given the moment it is created. A patent is something that protects inventions, right? And it is a right given granted by a state upon application by an inventor, which gives the inventor exclusive rights to his invention. These rights are territorial. Once again, apart from copyright, trademarks, industrial designs, and patents, you need to go to the office and get it, and you're only granted for that particular country. So if you want to file your patent in several countries, then you'll have to go to several countries and file for patent, right? You're not just going to get it because you filed in one country. Don't expect you to have rights in every other country. Which means now what a patent does, in the purpose of a patent, is you can stop other people from using your invention. You protect your invention and you're granted rights to be the only person who can use this invention. Like, for example, someone that created the bicycle, as you have on the screen, the patent for the bicycle, he is the only one who therefore can ride this bicycle. This invention cannot be used by anyone else without getting his permission. So if he wants a lot of people to develop bicycles, if he wants a lot of people to sell bicycles, they have to pay him what's known as royalties, which is payment for permission to manufacture, sell, or manufacture, sell, or even export or import or a bicycle. So a lot of times people, like if you take some state-of-the-art patents that you get out there, like for instance, I'm a fan of drone photography. Now drones, DJI keeps a lot of patents to themselves. They don't license those patents out. The reason for that is their technology is getting better and better and more advanced. And that is how a lot of these countries have advanced themselves, because they keep those patents to themselves. They themselves become and more advanced, as a result of which they create a larger monopoly for themselves. And if that will make them the market leader in their industry far more than the next guy. Because if the next guy doesn't do enough and more R&D to compete with this party, and this party does a lot of R&D, like for instance, DJI does a lot of R&D, a lot of innovation, then DJI will have a massive commercial advantage in the marketplace as opposed to any other drone manufacturer. Now, if you look at GoPro, every year they invent. Now, if you look at Samsung, every year they are coming up with new things. Now, Samsung especially is a lot more innovative than Apple. Apple is relatively slow to innovate. So as a result of that, you can see how Samsung has grown over the last 10 years, how they're catching more and more markets. They are becoming more and more successful in the marketplace. Now, if you look at GoPro, there aren't many people that compete with GoPro. Whereas in the automobile industry, some companies, like for instance, Toyota, they choose to license their technology out. Now, Tesla does that a lot. Tesla has licensed a lot of its technology out, as a result of which the industry itself takes off, right? Like electric vehicles are becoming more and more popular also because Tesla has licensed a lot of its patents out. So, but still, you have that choice. As a patent holder, you have the choice whether to license or keep it to yourself. If you keep it to yourself, you will have massive advantages in the market. If you license it, well, then you can reap lots of revenue from that licensing. Sometimes your licensing royalties are far more than the sales that you get from a product. Like, for instance, in the mobile phone industry, if you break this mobile phone into about 1,000 pieces, it's owned by about 1,000 different people. Each of those people will own one person will own a part of the camera, one person will own will own the processor, one person will own the touch screen, one person will own something else. And all these people cross-license to each other, right? And if you look at like the patent suits, the lawsuits that took place from 2012 upwards, a lot of these lawsuits were done by parties who say are relatively unheard of. Like, I hadn't heard of some of those guys, right? The reason for that is that what they would do is they would manufacture one tiny component, and they will license that component to so many different parties. So every phone will possibly have that tiny component, which is amazing. So royalties through patents there's a lot of money to be made. And some of our Sri Lankans have done extremely well in this area of patenting and licensing, which has brought a lot of royalties to the country. So if you're in the business in an innovative startup, then I suggest you consider also looking at a patent protection. Now, what is a patent? It is a right granted by a state, and these rights are territorial, meaning it's only given for a certain country, and it's given for a duration of 20 years, provided necessary fees are paid in the IP office, and the patent is not nullified in a court of law. Now, I'll go into what it takes to obtain a patent. A patent first must be novel. First, it must be patentable in terms of Section 62(3). Sadly, I don't have time to go into that. But like I said, get a copy of the IP Act and look at these sections that I have put up. Now, Section 62(3) refers to areas that are not patentable. Like, for instance, methods of doing business is not patentable, right? Now, for an invention that you have created, these are the three main requirements you need. Firstly, that invention must be novel, right? Novel is a legal term to mean it must be new. It cannot exist already out there. It must involve an inventive step. It cannot be an obvious invention. It has to be inventive, right? Your invention has to be inventive. There cannot be, like for example, I'll just explain inventive step. Now, we all know that fertilizer is good for plants, right? We also know that water is also very good for plants. Now, one of your companies, one of your startups, think of an idea of mixing water and fertilizer together in a bottle, right? So it's fertilizer mixed in the water and vitamins mixed in the water. And all you have to do is pour that bottle on top of your plants every day and the plants will take off. Now, then you decide, I want to go patent this invention. Your patent examiner, now any patent is examined to see whether it fulfills its requirements, might turn around and say, but this is obvious, no, Mr. So-and-so, because patents, now your invention may be novel. I haven't heard of water mixed with fertilizer, but we all know that water is good for the plant and we all know that fertilizer is good for the plant. So just because you put it together, I don't think there's the inventive step. This is just an obvious mixing of two existing solutions. So that is what inventive step is. First thing is novelty, meaning an invention has to be new and it shall not consist of anything that has already been disclosed to the public anywhere in the world. The test is a worldwide test, right? Your invention cannot exist anywhere in the world. If it exists anywhere in the world, then they might not give you might not pass the test on novelty, right? Or it cannot be described in a previous patent application. So when you're filing for a patent, you have to ensure that your invention is not found anywhere else, and it's completely innovative, right? Then the next thing you have to look. No, those are the three. Next thing is it has to be industrially applicable, right? If it is, meaning it has to be used in some industry. They are not going to give you a patent if it's not used in some industry. So that is the requirements to obtain a patent. Then the next is industrial designs. Industrial designs cover and govern things like the shapes of products. Like, for example, I don't have anything on my table to show you. The Coke bottle has a very unique shape. Like, for instance, can you see this chair that's here? Now, you can get an industrial design for a chair based on its shape, or both these chairs. Right? So this may not be new in the shape, but this second chair below might be a very unique and novel chair. So you might get an industrial design for this, but it has to be new in terms of it cannot exist anywhere else in the world. Once again, just like a patent and a trademark, it is granted upon application to a state asking rights in that design. Right? It can apply to any composition of lines or colors or any three-dimensional form that gives special appearance to a product of industry or handicraft. Right? Now, remember, this is different from a patent. A patent, you get rights for your idea, for your invention. There has to be an inventive step. Here, there is no requirement for an inventive step, right? It's just formation of a product. Now, bottles, you see various industrial designs granted for bottles for any shape, for any product that is sold. If it has a unique shape, you can get an industrial design for it. Okay, moving on. Requirements, it must be new. It cannot have been available to the public anywhere in the world and cannot be scandalous or contrary to morality. It is granted upon first application. And an industrial design shall not be considered new solely by reason of fact that it differs from earlier designs in minor respects. Right? These are the requirements for an industrial design. Why is IP important to a startup? Now, I'm going to quickly do this. Can one of you all get online and tell me, we have time till 8:30, no?
Yes, Mr. Revan.
Okay. Right. So why is intellectual property important to a startup? Now, I want to cover IP because I think a lot of us you can learn about registration from a book, but sometimes practical aspects of IP might really help you all as companies on how to form a strategy to take your products to a global marketplace, which is why I'm spending more time on intellectual property. Right? Why is IP important to a startup? The main advantages are you have a right to use this product. as opposed to your competitors. Like, for instance, you take, like I said, DJI drones. Now, DJI has been keeping a lot of its tech to itself. For example, its ability to sense the obstacles and move obstacles out of the way, right? Now that it may not license to a lot of people, or maybe it has, I don't know. But if it keeps it to itself, if it keeps that advantage to itself, then it'll have a competitive advantage in the market. So one primary reason is you have the sole right to use this, and you have the sole right to keep it to yourself and not share it with people, not license it to people, right? You can license it if you want, and you can license it to make money. But you can keep it also for the reason of having a competitive advantage in the marketplace, which can be huge, right? Especially in an extremely competitive marketplace. You might want to keep it to yourself. Like, for instance, in the mobile phone industry, now the Samsung Note has that Note Pen, the stylus. You don't find Apple having that stylus other than in their iPad range. Now the Samsung Note stylus has certain advantages that only Samsung has. So as a result of that, people choose the Note series as opposed to the other phones that are being sold, which is one of the reasons that Samsung is doing well. Okay. Then you have the right to sell. You have the right to sell that product to any other person. Like, for instance, if I have a patent and I am short-strapped for cash or whatever, I can sell it to another party for massive profits. Right? That is another reason why you can consider creating intellectual property, or anything. Even your brand can be sold. Your copyright can be sold. Now, software. Now, I'm only talking about inventions here. Talk about software. Software, you have a right to use that software for yourself. Like, for instance, the Facebook software, only Facebook uses. No one else uses it, right? And as a result of that, they have a massive massive advantage in the market. They are not licensing it to any third party. No Chinese company has come up with it. There is only one TikTok in the market, right? No other company has come up with it. Then you have a right to license. License is like what Microsoft Office is doing. They're giving it to so many people. And most of all, you have a right to prevent others from doing the same business as you. Now, for something you really need to know about intellectual property is not just a shield that protects you, but it's also a sword. If you don't enable the sword factor and prevent people from copying you, then your rights may not be of any value, right? Because then people will go ahead and copy you if you don't act on it. So the copyright holder, the patent holder, the industrial design holder has to fight for your rights. You have to be able to go to court and fight, right? Then you have a right to franchise your business, like what McDonald's has done, what Pizza Hut has done, what Baristas has done, what Starbucks has done, right? These guys stay at home and then they franchise their business, right? So franchising means that you follow my business model, and if you are to follow my business model, you can use my brand name, but then you have to pay me. You have to pay me a certain royalties, and also if you breach the franchise agreement in any way, then I'm going to terminate the agreement with you, which means you can't use that brand name again. So that is how a lot of these, like McDonald's, they don't own every single McDonald's company. Every single McDonald's outlet. Essentially what they do is they give a franchise agreement. So the moment you sign for that franchise agreement, you have to pay a lot to get the franchise agreement because you pay for the brand value that you're using. Then you can start your business and follow McDonald's, right? The biggest advantage to startups is it's very attractive to investors. You have to know that it's very, very attractive to investors. Because if you come with a particular intellectual property, like for instance, if you have invented something that no one else can use for 20 years, then if you have a patent for that, for 20 years, you have a monopoly for that invention, right? So naturally, an investor would like to to invest in your company because you come with a particular advantage. Like, for example, if one of you guys, if one of the guys in this group has created a cure or another vaccine for COVID, right? You can easily put a bid up saying, okay, we are looking for investors. Because people know there's a market for that. People know, okay, if you are creating a new COVID, people know that, wow, this is very beneficial to us. We would want to invest in this because there's money to be made, right? So example of companies that use IP for its own IP generation for profit is, say, the M series engine that BMW has. A lot of that technology they're not licensing out, they're keeping it to itself. Intel Core is another example of that. DJI drones, right? They're keeping a lot of that tech to themselves and they're getting an advantage in the market. The Coke in industrial design, not many people, Coke hasn't shared it with other parties. Then example of companies that license. Now, Microsoft, as you all know, licenses its technology. You can buy it by purchasing a shrink wrap license. Then you can use it at will, right? But for example, if you don't pay your monthly subscription or annual subscription, then it terminates. Or now Microsoft those days used to sue quite regularly people who haven't continued their license or are using cracked versions. Lightroom is the same. Now, Facebook, Netflix, what they do is they use, and YouTube, what they do is they use other people's original content, right? And they host it on their network, on their platform. But other people's original content they take by way of a license. Like, for instance, Facebook licenses, you give Facebook a license to have your photographs on Facebook. There's a license there. You give Facebook a copyright license. You are the Facebook holders. You are the copyright holders. Now, Netflix takes people's content and they pay them back in return. Like, for instance, all the Hollywood production houses are paid by Netflix. In turn, we pay Netflix to be able to watch that content. So it's full of license agreements, right? Very complicated license agreements. Airbnb, we pay Airbnb a commission to be able to use their platform and put our houses or our hotels on Airbnb. And it's become one of the largest, most successful startups in the world. Now it's no more startup, but essentially it's it was one of the most successful startups. Now I said, with regards to franchise, examples of companies that franchise: McDonald's, KFC, Coffee Bean, and Starbucks. The biggest advantage of intellectual property is profit, right? And then passive income. For example, if you write a book, you will have, for as long as that book is in the market, you have that book on Kindle or you have it on Audible. You don't even need to look at it thereafter, right? It's on Audible and they're just giving you returns every time somebody downloads it. Every time somebody downloads a Kindle version, you don't even need to produce new versions of the book. You just put it on Kindle. And then Amazon pays you an income for everyone that downloads and purchases your book. The next thing of intellectual property is trademarks. It gathers brand value. Now that is very important to any company, brand value, brand recognition. So keep that in mind, right? I'm kind of moving fast. Right, so we will stop IP there now for the moment, and we will go into company, which I will finish maybe in 15 minutes. And then we will move on to questions. I will take questions from anyone. Let me just share my screen again. Does anyone want to ask me questions on IP now before we get to the company this thing, or shall I finish off company and take on the questions altogether? Okay, Let me just get my presentation now. Okay, y'all can see this now?
Yes, Mr. Revan.
Yeah, so what you see is sole proprietorship, partnership, and yeah. So now these are the types of business registrations you have. Now, all this time we spoke about intellectual property. Now, intellectual property you get after you set up your business. Why I wanted to start with that is I find that more interesting. So I didn't want to bore you all with technicalities of how to register a company before right at the very start, right? So to make it interesting, I went into intellectual property. But keep in mind that before you file for any IP, well, you can file for IP in your personal capacity, but essentially, it's generally what people do is they set up their companies first, and then they go file for a trademark, patent, industrial design, or whatever intellectual property you want to follow. So now let's talk about business registrations, how to set up a business. Now, there are so many different types of businesses you can do. A business starts with an idea of what business you want to get into first. Keep that in mind, right? First get your business idea out. First think that out first. What is it that I want to do? What sort of business do I want to create? What do I want to sell? Right? First think about who your investors are going to be, who your partners are going to be, to which markets are you going to sell this product or service. Is it going to be a product or a service? Where are you going to sell it? To whom are you going to sell it? All that you need to think of. You need to have your business plan before you even set up a business. Now here you find 6 different types of businesses. We will not go into all. We will go into maybe the first 3, simply because the rest are just, I'll briefly go into it. In order to do a business. Now, here you have, let's take the first 3. You have what's known as a sole proprietorship. You have what's known as a partnership. And you have what's known as a private limited company. Okay? The curtain is going a bit nuts. So a sole proprietorship is a business that is, it's different from a company. Let's just keep that in mind. It is something that you set up on your own. It's like you doing a business from your home, right? But the main reason you register it is because you want to register the name saying that you are doing business under this name, under the name of this sole proprietorship. So there is, every divisional secretary has what's known as the business registry, where you can go and register the fact that you're doing a sole proprietorship. Okay? So if you want to start up, the quickest way of starting up a business is to go and file for a sole proprietorship. There, I think you need to get some registration from your Grama Sevaka or a copy of something from your Grama Sevaka. Then you have to go to the business registry and say the name you want, and then you can register it. There is a small fee to be paid. You can get your business registration very, very fast, and it's very, very cheap, and it's very, very cost effective. So you have a massive advantage in terms of speed, right? But the main disadvantage in a sole proprietorship is there is no difference between your personal income and your business income. That is an advantage and a disadvantage. Firstly, all profits belong to the owner. If you make profits, it belongs to you, right? This is your business. The business is not that of belonging to a company. It's your business, right? You don't have to worry about shareholders. You don't have to worry about making statements of accounts to the company registry. You have no requirement to have shareholder meetings. You have no requirement to have board meetings. You are not governed by articles. You are not governed by shareholder agreements. You are not governed by anything. Business, you can do business the way you want. But there's a slight disadvantage here. Say you take a loan for your business, right? And you're unable to pay back that loan. Then you take that loan in your personal capacity for a sole proprietorship, not in the name of a business. That would mean that the banks can thereafter come after you. It can come after your personal assets. So there is unlimited liability. Your liability is, the liability of the business is your liability as well. For example, if say you start, that's only, and it doesn't end where concerning loans. Your liability extends to various things. For example, if someone comes into your restaurant and he gets really sick eating your food, and this person gets really, really sick and decides to sue you for damages for food poisoning. Now, in a company, the business belongs to the company, that person will sue the company. But in a sole proprietorship, they will sue in your name. They will not sue in the name of the company. They will sue in your name, which means that you will be personally liable for any damages done to someone. Say you have a restaurant or you are running a hotel. Someone had been cleaning the floor and there was some soap suds still on the floor, not cleaned. Some guest comes running down the staircase, slips, trips and falls, cracks the back of their skull on the jagged corner of the staircase. Now that person wants to sue. Since it's not a company and it is a sole proprietorship, they will sue you. They will not sue the company. So that is one of the biggest disadvantages of having a sole proprietorship. The other advantage of having a company is, of course, legal personality. I will go into that when I come into a company, when I talk about company. Now, the next thing that governs, next type of business you can use is a partnership. A partnership is where, say, now I'm a lawyer, I get together with 3 other lawyers and we put together a partnership where we will enter into what's known as a partnership agreement. The partnership agreement will set out how profits are going to be shared amongst us, and it will set up how, in the event the partnership is terminated, assets are to be divided. Now, once again, the liability is shared between the partners. If you are running a hotel and someone slips and falls and we get sued, then that person has to sue all the named partners, right? So the defendants would be all the named partners, and all of us have to answer the plaint, and we are all equally liable. Similarly, if we take a loan, we can take a loan in the name of the partnership, but still, all of us have to pay, are equally liable or liable to that loan. Now, what if some of us dies? Now, a sole proprietorship, the business ends with the death of the sole proprietor. Same with the partnership. The partnership ends the moment someone dies. That is something you need to know. Now, a partnership and a sole proprietorship are easy to set up and easy to close, right? Because you don't have to have audited accounts. You don't have to. There is no major requirement for things. There is no major requirements for board meetings, shareholder meetings, nothing like that, right? Just run your business. It's a plug and play type operation. Well, a company, now the third one is a company, a private limited company. What a company gets is it gets legal personality. It has a personality of its own. It is separate from the owners. Now, what the people that set up the company get are shares in the company. Now, I might be a single share, it might be a single shareholder company, or it might be a company with like several shareholders. Then the forms that you fill up to give the share, to set up the company will set out how many shares each party has. So like say you can have one share each, or you can distribute 100 shares, and certain parties will have 30, certain parties will have 20, certain parties will have 50. So if it's 3 shareholders, it'll be 30, 20, 50. With 4 shareholders, it can be 25, 25, 25, 25. Why set up a company? Well, the main reason you set up a company is it has its own legal personality. We'll go into a bit of history here. Companies were initially formed because those days people used to, now especially the English, were very much into colonizing other lands and trading. International trade was just blossoming, and it was a big thing. But it was very high risk. You can lose everything if your ship goes underwater, right? And especially if you want people to invest in your ship, invest in creating this vessel, you need a company formation. Because you yourself, don't want to be personal liable if the ship goes down, where you will owe all the different banks money for what they have given you for this venture. It was for that reason that people started setting up this concept of companies. So companies were set up, legislation was passed to say, okay, there is this concept of a company. So now, if someone wants to do a risky venture, like especially startups are very risky ventures, right? It's like sending a ship from one country to another. If you want to do a risky venture, you will need to take a loan, but you don't want to be personally liable for this loan. So then what you do is you take the loan in the name of the company. If by chance your ship goes down, or if by chance your startup fails, only the company is liable. The loan is given to the assets of the company. So they can seize the assets of the company. They can liquidate the company and take the assets of the company, but they cannot go after your personal assets. You are not personally liable. That is the primary advantage of setting up a company. Also, for startups, for the purpose of investments, getting investments, obtaining investments, it's very, very important to set up company structures. Because an investor doesn't want to give you money, but if they give money to the company, then they'll get shares. So there's a written account of what percentage they own in that company. So they make a business decision. I give you 10 million rupees for 50% of your company. Then I will own 50% of any profits that will come thereafter. Right? That is how this whole company structure came. So earlier people used to just trade, but then the risks, the personal liability risks that people used to take, either upon taking a loan or either upon being sued, was just not worth it. So they set up companies, especially if you want to go big, if you want to go large, if your asset value is going to go into millions, then set up companies, which is why people set up companies. Now, which is why people set up subsidiary companies also, because your subsidiary company can have a massive liability, right? And you don't want your parent company to be saddled with that liability. So you set up a private subsidiary company. Subsidiary company functions on its own. Now, Salomon versus Salomon was a case those days where Salomon set up a private limited company to manufacture boots, I believe, right? And he took debentures, or he took debentures from he gave debentures of the company stocks, debentures of the company to someone to obtain a loan on behalf of the company. Then later, that company was that boot manufacturing really suffered in England, and they weren't able to pay back those loans. That person who gave the loan then started suing Salomon. Then Salomon took it to court saying, no, this is a private limited company. I should not be liable for the value of the company. And court held with him. and he was not personally held liable. That was one of the first cases for personal liability, to say that there is a corporate veil. Companies have what's known as the corporate veil. They are their own legal personality. The person behind the corporate veil doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who that person is. It's finally the company that is held accountable. The directors are held accountable. Now, I'm going to wrap up very soon for questions, but I'm going to leave you with this. Now, company structures have different things that people discuss regularly. For instance, there are shareholders to every company. Now, what you need to know about shareholders are the people that own the company. What is your board of director? Board of director is the guys appointed by the shareholders to run the company. Now, a lot of companies now have board of directors that aren't the shareholders. They get professionals to run the company. And that may be the best way to do it. You get either a managing director or a top CEO and pay him top money to run the company on behalf of yourself. Shareholders sit back, but the shareholders have a right to ask the board of directors questions at shareholder meetings. And the board of directors meet regularly to run the operations of the company, to decide and take decisions that need to be taken with regards to the running of a company. Now, I'm quickly going to go into what articles of... okay, let's go into the other forms of companies, since this is all about registration. We discussed sole proprietorship, partnership, private limited company. Let's discuss trusts. Now, trusts are used for charities and to carry out certain projects. Now, if I want to donate 50,000 rupees to be used to educate children, and I want this run through a separate entity, I can set up a trust. I can give that asset to the trust and say, okay, here's 50,000 rupees, run it, and give these assets to poor, underprivileged children from the ages of this and that. And I will set it out. To saying to whom this money is to be distributed to. That is essentially what a trust is. So for there to be a trust, there has to be a trust document. That trust document says who the trustees are. Now, trustees are the people who will carry that asset, who will own that asset. So you transfer the asset to the trust, and trustees will govern that asset, not own, they will govern that asset to ensure that the requirements of the trusts are carried out. Now, this happens a lot with regards to orphanages, home for the elders. They're governed by way of trusts. I will stop now. So far, I have taken you through all the 4 different types of IP: sole proprietorship, partnership, private limited company, and trusts. Public listed companies, as you know, are companies that are listed on the stock exchange. Right? And I will stop there to take questions for the group, because we only have like less than 10 minutes now.
Hello?
Hello, yes?
Yeah, yes. Do you know where I can find the recording of the workshops that were missed?
Sorry?
Do you know where I can find recording of the previous workshops?
You'll have to ask the organizers. I'm a guest on this program. So Sandhiti can answer that.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
thank you.
will be uploading all this to YouTube later. We will circulate the links then.
On Rotaract?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to circulate on Rotaract?
No, we will PM each and every one of you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any questions with regards to today's workshop?
Yeah, so meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat box, and also you can raise your hands if you want to ask them yourselves. We will unmute you and give you the chance to ask your questions. And if anyone in the Facebook live stream are watching, you may leave any questions you have in the chat box and they will be directed to us. And Mr. Revan, before moving on to the Q&A session, we would like to give a shout out to our bronze partner, SEMA Sri Lanka, IT solutions partner, My Shopbox, and our advisory partner, PwC.
Our story is one of reimagining. Reimagining who you can be, what you can achieve, and how SEMA can support you. Founded in the UK in 1919 with the belief that an accountant's impact goes beyond the balance sheet, SEMA joined forces with the AICPA in the US to form the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. Today, we serve members and students in 179 countries and territories. Contact SEMA Sri Lanka.
I would say most businesses solve a social issue, if you ask me. So you can form a company if you want, or if it's to be non-profit, sometimes some people go with a guarantee company or a trust. But I would say start if you are going to make some form of profits from this, set it up as by way of a company and carry on business.
Thank you.
Okay. So there are some questions here. If I have written a novel but not yet published it, how can we protect it from being copied under by others from under copyright? Yeah, so that's a very good question. You don't need to publish it, right? The moment you write something, you get copyright for it. You get copyright the moment something is written. So, but of course, you have to prove that you were the first person to write the novel. Now, that is not going to be easy because sometimes your person who's copying you is going to come and say, this is my idea, and I came up with it much before this gentleman, so he's lying. And this is essentially my idea. So one practical step that I advise, and even people before me has been advising, is you take your novel, you put it into a large envelope, you seal it properly, and you register post it to yourself. The postman or the post office will stamp on that envelope the date in which this was done. Then, for example, somebody takes your novel, copies it, and runs with it, then you can go to the Commercial High Court and say, look, I'm the original author of this. This person has copied it from me. Look, these are my transcripts, and my transcripts date 2 or 3 years before this person even published it. And then the judge will open the envelope, and the judge will go on the time stamp that is on the envelope to say this was done much before the person who has published it. Therefore, that second person would be in breach of copyright that ideally belongs to you. Next question. Any other questions? Okay, if we first start as a sole proprietorship, then later we can change it to a private limited. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. That's the second question here. Another question is how much time does it take to be granted a patent in Sri Lanka? It roughly takes about 2 to 3 years. Can you share a patent license with another person? I don't get that question. Can you license your invention to someone else? Yes, you can.
So let's say me and my friend came up with a product, and we want to patent it. Can we share that patent?
Yes. You can put both your names as inventors.
Okay.
Any other questions? No other questions? Okay, then we can finish right on time. Yes, Anditi.
Mr. Revan, there's one more question in the chat box. Akila has asked whether does a grace period apply for designs as well, or is it only for patents?
What do you mean grace period? So there is no grace period. There's a yeah. I think that person refers to a grace period in the event your invention has leaked to the market before you got a patent. Then sometimes they give you a grace period of a year if you have leaked it, or if someone else has leaked it, 6 months. No, that is only there for patents and not industrial design. Any other question?
Mr. Revan, there's one more question. Why isn't it necessary to register copyrights when compared to trademarks?
Yes, that's a good question. I think it was more the fact that you can get copyright for absolutely anything, right? You can get copyright for doing like the most mundane drawing that can even be ugly, but you will still get copyright for it. So they want to protect every literary work, and they want to protect every painting that has been authored. So all these laws are made by legislatures. So the legislatures at the time decided that let's not make this registerable, but anyone, the moment they create something, is granted a copyright. Can you register a name that relates to some other registered names? No, you cannot, because under section 103 and 104, you do not have rights for, they're not going to give you a trademark for something that relates or sounds like somebody else's business. The next question is, as a startup, if an employee creates a work for the startup, is it necessary to provide due recognition to the creator employee of the work? So it depends on the type of work. For patents and copyrights, you have what's known as the moral right, which cannot be taken away from you. Right? A moral right is to have recognition applied to you. But under the IP Act, if you do some work for a company, and the company pays you either commission or salary, the rights to that work that you have been told to do accrues to that company. You are not the owner of that, the company is the owner. But the moral right to say that you did it remains with you. So you will get recognition for the work you do in a copyright work or a patent. Anything else?
Mr. Revan, I think that's about it.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of the fifth and the final workshop of the Jumpstart workshop series. The finale of Jumpstart would happen on the 6th of December, so do stay tuned for that. I would like to thank Mr. Revan Weerasinghe for joining with us today and for sharing your time, knowledge with us. I'm sure everyone who joined today learned a lot of valuable things. Thank you very much once again.
I just want to say this, if you all have any other further questions, you can maybe send it to me on LinkedIn or something. I might be able to answer you.
Sure, Mr. Revan.
Okay, thank you.
Our story is one of reimagining.
Meet Nadisha and Nipani. They make upcycle products and want to share this passion. So they started a business and took it online using Shopbox. Shopbox is an online commerce solution which allows anyone to easily and affordably sell online. It provides all the tools needed to set up and run your own website. Have your online store set up in minutes by entering your store details and uploading your product. Taking the hassle out of setting up and maintaining an online store, Shopbox helps you work on the more important things, like growing your business. Make your business successful. Shopbox.